The very first time I saw a ghost, I was in 6th grade and I spent the night at my aunt's house during the summer, and it was in the early morning in the Midwest. My aunt didn't have a room for my sister and I to stay in, so we usually slept in the living room. And the way that her house is set up is right when you walk into the house, you can take a sharp left up like 4 stairs and you're in the living room. That floor is just the living room and the kitchen, and it is separated by a wall and an arch that leads into the kitchen. In the living room specifically, there's a staircase that leads all the way upstairs into the hallway with like the guest bathroom, the bedrooms, etc. And it's important to note that this sectional, the portion I was laying on, because I'm a good big sister and I let my little sister take up the big fat part of the sectional, I was laying directly, if the camera was the TV stand and then the staircase is to the left, I was facing like straight towards it. So I could see the arch in the kitchen and a little bit into the kitchen, the staircase, the TV, and the door people came through. It's also important to note that I am like an abnormally early bird. I've always been an early bird. When I was little, I used to wake up at 6:30 every day. I had an alarm set. I was ready to rock and roll. I never, ever woke up earlier than my alarm unless it was like 5 minutes before. This day in particular, I woke up 45 minutes before my alarm went off. And I was like, okay, well, that's not enough time for me to fall back asleep and do whatever by the time my aunt wakes up and my sister gets up. So I was like, you know what, I'll just get on my little Motorola phone and do whatever. So I was laying like this. If y'all were the TV, I was laying like this on my phone when out of the corner of my eye, I see a full body white apparition walk out of the kitchen. Through the arch, out from the kitchen, in front of the TV, which is the camera, look at my sister and I, my baby sister sleeping right behind me, walk down the stairs and disappear onto the main floor. And immediately, and this is a very common theme in my stories, I start rationalizing. I'm like, that was not a ghost, that was something else. That was a car with its high beams on, it's early in the morning, the light's not coming in yet, maybe it's the sun, I don't know. And just to note, it was like pure white, like this color, but see-through. And right as I'm rationalizing this, and I was like, I'm not trying to scare my baby sister, from behind me, I hear, "Did you see that?" My baby sister was awake the entire time. And she's a notorious sleepwalker, sleep talker, says scary things in her sleep. So I immediately kind of bend my head backwards because she is like behind me and my head is resting on the pillow that is like separating this part of sectional that she was sleeping on. And I lean my head back and her eyes are huge. So she wasn't sleeping. And I immediately throw my legs over my shoulders and I like roll on top of her and I'm like, "You're lying. Don't mess with me. You saw that." She said, "Yeah, I saw it." And we never talked about it again until we started seeing it at my biological dad's apartment too. And it started with just me. Seeing this thing everywhere. And I remember when my dad got this apartment, I don't know how we knew, but the man who was in there before us had passed away in the apartment. That's important because the way that the apartment was set up was my dad got a 2-bedroom and my sister and I shared a bedroom. I refused to sleep in the bedroom. I don't know why. It made me like feel weird. I didn't like being in there. I don't know what it was, but I would not sleep in that bedroom. So I slept on the couch. And the way that the couch was set up in his apartment at the time was I could see the bathroom door front, like that was in the hallway. I could see into the kitchen through the breakfast bar nook and the apartment door. I woke up at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning and everyone's obviously asleep. I have always slept with a lamp on because I'm scared of the dark. As you can see, it's like illuminating onto my face even now. And right as I'm about to put my feet on the floor to go into the bathroom, I see that white figure walk into the bathroom. And I'm like, maybe it was just my dad, maybe it was my sister, I don't know. I didn't hear anyone pee. I didn't even hear anyone flush the toilet. I didn't hear anyone leave, and the light never turned on. So something walked in there and never came out. And it's important to note, at the same time, years later, my sister and I were talking about this with my aunt, and she was like, you know, it's so weird because around the same time I bought my uncle, she bought my uncle a razor like an electric razor. And in the middle of the night, at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, it starts going off. And they immediately were like, what is going on? They thought it was bad batteries, took the battery out, unplugged it from the wall, and went back to bed. It started going off again without the battery in it, without it being plugged in. And they're like, what is going on? It was not switched on. They started trying to break it so it would stop buzzing in the middle of the night when my uncle's alarm started going off. And not like an alarm on his phone. An old school alarm clock from like the 90s started blaring the alarm at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And she couldn't explain it. I couldn't explain what I saw. The last time I saw that thing was when my dad, my brother, and I were moving all of his stuff out of the apartment so he can move into a new one. And right as I'm shutting the door, I was tasked with shutting and locking the door and leaving the key under the mat. As I'm shutting the door, you can see all the way back into my bedroom in that apartment, and I saw it peek around the corner. Oh. And I never saw it again.
Okay. So anybody that knows me knows that I grew up in an extremely haunted house. Not only did I grow up in a haunted house, but it was a haunted neighborhood. Everybody had something going on in their home on that block, and it was pretty commonplace for you to be like, oh, what's your ghost up to, you know? Nothing like too sinister, but everybody kind of had their own thing going on in their home. It wasn't unusual for things to happen. But one night when I was in high school, I was sitting in my room and I was doing my homework. Now, our home was situated, it was a 2-story home, and on the bottom half was a garage that we used as storage, and it had deadbolts on it. We never went under there. We just stored a bunch of stuff under there and never gave it a second thought. But our residence was on the top floor. So I was sitting in my room and doing my homework, and I started to hear a tapping on my window. And at first it was just kind of like the faintest tap, and it was kind of like, did I just hear something, you know, like, was that something? I don't know. It was just ever so slight, and it would be like every once in a while, but as soon as I paid attention to it, it didn't happen anymore. And I started to feel like kind of uneasy, and it started to get like a little louder. And so I would go, and the odd thing was that there was no tree outside my window. There was no access to my window. The only way that you could possibly tap on my window would be if you were maybe throwing something at it, but it was a very intentional tap, 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 you know? And I got up a few times. Every time I would look, nothing would happen. There was nothing there. My dogs were running in the yard down below. There's no way that anybody could be there. I shone my flashlight out there. I looked around, and I'm like, you know, what is up? And the only other one that was home was my mom. I think she was in another room, like cooking, or I'm not really sure what she was doing, but I called her in, and I told her something really weird is going on. Not our normal weird, you know, the little bumps in the, you know, weird things that would move, or, you know, who knows. This seems different. This seems like something's intentionally trying to mess with my head, you know. And she kind of brushed it off, and she was like, I don't know, like, I'll go in, I'll look around, we'll see what you got going on in there. And of course there was nothing, and no taps happened when she was in there, so she didn't hear anything. And she was like, I don't know, like, it is what it is. I don't know what you want me to do to help you, you know. So say a prayer and good luck, you know. That's kind of what she had said. And so she leaves, and it continues to happen, and I'm like, I started to feel like this thing is trying to drive me crazy, you know. Like, the air was off, things were different, and I was really uncomfortable. And I call her back in, and she comes in and she's kind of like poo-pooing me again, and making fun of me and saying like, you're in high school, you know, like there's no one can even get to your window, there's nothing tapping on your window, you know, like. And she jokingly goes, ooh, you know, like, ghosties, is anybody in here, you know, like just totally making fun of me. And I'm like irritated. And right after she said it, we're both standing in my room, and something starts banging on our floor, like from underneath, and it shakes the whole house. It hits 3 times, bang, 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 and everything's shaking. We're freaking out. We're screaming. There's no access under there, you know. We're screaming. She runs out of the room. I run out. I trip and I fall, you know, going out my door, and she is so freaked. She just grabs my arm and starts dragging me, you know, away from whatever the hell is going on. I cut my leg. I'm bleeding. It's, you know, the most dramatic thing for something that's not there. Like, who knows, you know? And we're shaking. We go outside to look around, and of course there's nothing there, you know, but the house feels really off. And I'm like, I told her it hit 3 times, like, you know what that means, you know, something bad is here, you know, like this is not good. And so even in high school, I was like, I'm sleeping with you tonight. I'm not going in my room. I don't think I went in my room for a few days, you know. And I would tell this story to like my friends throughout the years, but you know, I never told it to my kids. So like, I want to say like 14 years later, we're in the house with my mom. We're in between like living arrangements, so my kids are there, I'm there, and one day my daughter comes up to me and she's like, you know, it was so weird. She was in my old room, and she's like, it was so weird. I was just sitting there, and I started to hear this tapping on the window, and she's like, and I couldn't figure it out, because she's like, what would be tapping? And every time that I got up to go look, you know, it would stop. And she's like, I feel like I'm crazy, you know. And I told her, oh, you're not crazy, you know. I was like, you're not crazy, and don't answer it, you know. Don't acknowledge it, and don't answer it, you know. Never answer whatever's trying to get your attention, you know. So that was her introduction into the world of spooky, you know. But I have tons of stories. Let me know if you want to hear more.
Okay, so one more quick ghost story while I sit and wait for my kids to get out of school. So probably like a little less than 20 years ago, my ex-boyfriend at the time had moved into my mom and our house, and was staying with us. And we were both asleep one night in our room, and it was super dark. It was only lit by the moonlight, which there wasn't, you know, too much of it. And for some reason, I start to wake up, you know. I can't see very well, but I start to notice that there's a figure not too far from me, kind of kneeling and looking at me. And I start to realize, I was like, oh my god, like, it's my boyfriend. Why is he being so weird? You know, like, why is he kneeling there looking at me, you know, in the middle of the night? Like, what, you know, is he okay? What's going on? And at the same moment, I can feel something moving behind me, you know, which I'm realizing is most likely, you know, my actual boyfriend, you know, laying behind me. And as my eyes are slowly adjusting, I see that it's my boyfriend, but it's not my boyfriend in his current state. The thing that is kneeling on the floor, like not more than 3 feet away from me, is like a decaying version of my boyfriend. He's wearing one of his normal outfits that he usually wore, but his face is emaciated, it's sunken in. He looks, you know, like he's dying or already dead, you know, and he's just staring at me, kind of like sad. And I start freaking out, because I'm like, well, this isn't my boyfriend, and what is this thing that's, you know, staring at me while I sleep, you know? And my boyfriend actually starts moving, and I start screaming, because God only knows what's going on. I couldn't handle it, and I start crawling backwards just to get away from whatever was looking at me, and I'm climbing over my boyfriend. He's waking up. He's wondering why the hell I'm screaming bloody murder, and what, is there an attacker? Who knows? And he wakes up, and by the time all the commotion is over, obviously whatever was over there is gone, and he never saw anything. He, thought I was insane. And then when I tried to explain to him, it was you, but it was a dead you, obviously, he didn't believe me. But I've told my friends for years this story, wondering like what they thought it was. Some thought like maybe it was like him in another dimension, like who knows. I don't know where he's at now or how he's doing. So, but yeah. So what do you think it was?
Okay, so I'm going to reply to this comment because my next story kind of elaborates on my claim that the entire neighborhood was haunted, including the church that I grew up directly next to. My mom and I were members of this church for many years, and eventually she was hired to do some light cleaning. She would come and mop the floors and clean the restrooms and kind of prepare the church for the next day's services. And eventually I would go over with her just to kind of keep her company, maybe help her a little bit as much as I could. And one evening we were in the kitchen area, and kind of mopping and doing things of that nature. And we heard a door slam directly above us. It was a 2-story church, and the offices were located directly above the kitchen. The door slams, and I look at my mom. And I'm like, is somebody else here with us? And she said, no, it's just us. I thought, okay, well, you don't seem surprised to hear that noise. And we kind of continue on our business, and I'm wondering what that noise was. We keep going, and more commotion is happening upstairs, and I'm looking at her to kind of read her reaction. She's looking at me trying to see, am I going to freak out or not? And I told her, does this happen quite often when you're here alone at night by yourself? And she tells me, yes, but if you don't acknowledge it, it'll leave you alone. So I try to hurry the fuck up and get out of there. I'm setting up programs. I feel like I see shadows moving, but I don't know if it's all in my head. I'm hearing these things, and I'm really freaking out at this point. And I turn and I look over, and this church had a little library that was more of like a broom closet with some bookshelves in it of things that members could, borrow. But I look, and this is always a locked room. Hardly anybody ever went in there and borrowed anything, and the door is open. And I tell my mom, the library door is open. And she's like, well, go close it. I told her, you go close it. I'm not going near that door. This place is creeping me out. I don't think I'll be coming to help you anymore, So we leave. I don't ever help her anymore. I start to really pay attention to the church when I'm on the outside. Our garden's down below. I can see up, into the windows. And shadows are moving when I know that nobody's in the church. I ask. A lot of the neighbors were members of the church, so that they all knew. They saw things moving in there. We all just didn't really pay too much attention to it. I always kind of wondered what would be haunting a church. But so that leads me to my next story, which is actually my mom's story. And this is the story of Dave. So Dave was one of our members of our church. And Dave was a super nice guy, but I always felt really uncomfortable around him, and I could never really quite put my finger on it. He never did anything to me. He never acted inappropriately. There was no reason for me to feel uncomfortable around him, but something was just kind of off. And one evening when my mom walked over to go to Bible study, all the usual members were there, including Dave. And it would be like an hour long thing, and she She walked back over and quickly grabbed a bottle of wine. Something seemed off about her. She seemed kind of upset or bothered. Had a couple snacks while she really downed this glass of wine. And I asked her, is everything okay? How was Bible study? Like, was there an argument? Because this was a very confrontational church sometimes. So she tells me, no, I'm actually going to run back over. A couple of us are going to stay behind. We really need to pray over Dave. He's going through something. And I thought, oh, okay. Maybe something's going on in his life and he's having a hard time. And I didn't really think too much about it. I just knew that she was really upset. So I thought, okay, well, good luck. She tells me, whatever you do, like, just don't come over there, okay? I said, why would I go over there? She said, I don't know, just don't walk over there, okay? If it takes me a while, don't worry about me, don't call me, and don't come over there. I tell her, okay, fine. Have fun. So she goes back over. She's gone for a while. She comes home. She looks like she's been through a fucking war. I'm looking at her like, what happened? Was there a fight? You look like you've been battling. God only knows. And she tells me, I don't want to talk about it. I'm really on edge and I'm just scared. I don't want to talk about it. Don't ask me about it. I'll tell you when I'm ready. I told her, okay. So a couple days go by and she's on edge and I'm looking at her and I keep looking at her kind of imploring, are you going to tell me what happened over there? And finally she does. She says that during the Bible study, Dave starts to slouch over. He's acting strangely. There's weird noises coming from him and they're thinking, oh shit, like, is Dave having a medical emergency? We should check on him. They're checking on him and he's not really responding and they're trying to figure out if they should call an ambulance or something. And slowly Dave lifts his head and looks at everybody with a blank expression and starts speaking in a language that none of them know. The closest thing that my mom could relate it to is we're from the Czech Republic, and it reminded her of when her grandma would speak, in their native tongue. So that's the closest thing that she could relate it to. Dave was Hispanic, so he spoke Spanish and he spoke English, and so this was really weird to hear him speaking this way. He starts kind of bending in weird ways. I don't know how unnatural, because she wouldn't elaborate too much, but she did tell me, and this is what scared the shit out of me, was that slowly the shadows that were naturally cast on the wall from, the lighting in the church, they started to move in unnatural ways, including shadows that had been cast on the ground that were now crawling on the ground, like moving slowly around as they were trying to deal with whatever the hell was going on with Dave. And things got pretty intense. The pastor's there. They're all praying. They're doing their damnedest to help Dave with what he's going through. And the shadows are just acting really erratically all around them. And my mom is trying not to lose her fucking shit, because she knows as soon as she lets her guard down, she's susceptible to something. So Dave snaps out of it. He kind of goes limp for a minute and he comes back to, and he's totally fine. He thinks they're in the middle of Bible study and they're trying to explain to him what happened, and he seems like, okay, well, sorry about that. I'll see you guys tomorrow, at church service. He goes on his way. He's there the following Sunday, totally normal, acting like nothing happened, and then completely dropped off the face of the earth. Everybody tried to contact him. Nobody ever heard from him again. They tried to stop by his house. He wasn't there anymore. Never seen again. But from that day, my mom was always on edge about that church. She never felt comfortable again. She was always looking over her shoulder, worried, that something had followed her home, and maybe it did. We had weird things happening anyways, but that was her limit, because that definitely seemed somewhat demonic to her. So I hope Dave found help wherever he went, but yeah, hopefully whatever was there didn't travel on right next door to where we were living. So yeah, that church was haunted.